Yes, what you've heard about Aria is true. She's one of the coolest and best new anomaly agents that Zenless has to offer, and even despite not having access to Non-Gong Yu yet, she's still incredibly powerful when played and built correctly. With this, today we'll be breaking down how Aria works, her best builds, how to play her, the strongest teams available at launch, and more. But before we go further, a reminder that today's video will have footage from the creator beta server. Before we go further, I'd like to quickly thank today's sponsor, Enjoygm. If you play games like Zenless, Genshin Impact, or Honkai Star Rail, Enjoygm is one of the easiest ways to top up. You just head over to their website, select your game and server, enter your UID, choose the amount that you want, and you're done. No account login or passwords required. Another huge advantage to Enjoygm is the pricing, and for example, if you're looking to pull for Aria, they regularly offer cheaper rates on internet memberships and monochromes, as well as special discounts of up to 32% compared to official top-ups, which really adds up over time. I will say, when topping up, not needing to enter your password on Enjoygm is also pretty nice, and so I'll have my exclusive link pinned in the comments. Use it to get an extra 5% discount when you top up. Thanks again to Enjoygm though for sponsoring today's video. Aria is an ether anomaly DPS whose main goal is to deal ether damage through a blooms and during stun windows. To do so, she generates phantom power, uses this to max charge her stomps, and she uses a blooms through her core passive. Now, at a baseline, she sounds and can be easy to play, but when looking to maximize her damage and ensure that she has enough buffs, stun windows, and time to deal damage, this is where things can become very complicated. To make things simple though, let's start by explaining what you need to know about her kit so that she can actually deal as much damage as possible. Aria's primary resource, as we mentioned earlier, is known as Phantom Power, and each stack allows her to skip one stage of charging her basic attack out of a maximum of 3 stages. Her secondary resource is known as All Out Cheering, and this is given to her after using her ultimate, but each stack of All Out Cheering that she gains from this lets her skip 2 charge stages instead of 1. Her special mechanic, Ether Veil Delusion Reprise, grants all squad members a flat 50 attack increase, and like Sunna's 50 attack increase, though this may not seem like much at first, across the full length of a fight, it does start to add up. Aria's core passive increases her anomaly proficiency by 90 points, and additionally, if the third hit of her held basic lands on an enemy affected by an anomaly, this will trigger a bloom, dealing extra damage that scales with Aria's anomaly mastery. If this target is stunned, this damage is further increased by a massive 50% as well. Aria's additional ability activates when a support, stun, or Angels of Delusion member is on her team, and whenever an Ether Veil is triggered with this active, she generates 4 fandom. To add to this, she can also extend the duration of corruption on enemies by 3 seconds, and as we talked about in the team guide video, this is similar to how Rina applies shock. Aria's standard basic attack is a 4-hit combo that deals ether damage, and once landing the 4th hit, she generates 1 phantom power on the ground. Aria's held basic attack has 3 charge levels, and reaching the 3rd level is what causes her to leap into the air and slam downward on enemies, dealing ether damage. Doing so will also require her to absorb nearby phantom power to instantly increase her charge level by 1 per stack consumed, but each stack absorbed also increases the attack's ether anomaly buildup by 10%, stacking up to 2 times, and this bonus is removed once the attack finishes. After the 4th hit of her basic attack, the 3rd hit of her held basic, or after using her special, EX special, quick assist, or ultimate, and if there are at least 2 phantom power on the field, Aria can hold down the basic attack button to consume 2 phantom power and immediately trigger the 3rd hit of her basic attack. Additionally, after landing the 3rd hit of her held basic, or following a chain attack or ultimate, if at least 2 phantom power are nearby, she can press basic attack within a short window to instantly activate the 3rd hit of basic attack perfect pitch again, consuming 2 phantom power in the process, with all of this just being shortcuts. Aria's EX special attack is a powerful kick that deals ether damage, and if it successfully hits an enemy, it generates 3 phantom power. Similar to Sunna though, you can also press her EX special twice in a row to trigger a follow-up attack, generating an additional 3 phantom power for a total of 6 stacks. Aria's dodge and assist are standard compared to other agents. Aria's chain attack is valuable, dealing high ether damage while also generating 4 phantom power, but as a disclaimer, though you may be tempted to use the double chain attack technique with Aria, this is not always recommended since Aria doesn't typically have long enough to fit all of her attacks in a short stun window. Aria's ultimate deals massive ether damage and places her into Moment of Delusion for 15 seconds, and while in this enhanced state, she gains 3 stacks of All Out Cheering, activates Ether Veil Delusion Reprise, and her 3rd hit of her held basic is upgraded to deal increased damage. While Ether Veil Delusion Reprise is also active, all squad members will receive an additional 50 attack for 30 seconds, and reactivating it will cancel any existing instance of this effect. Now, while charging her basic, Aria will also first consume all-out cheering stacks instead of her other stacks, with each stack increasing her charge level by 2. Upon entering or exiting Moment of Delusion though, any remaining all-out cheering stacks are converted into Phantom Power, with each stack producing 2 Phantom Power on the field. For skill priority, her core passive should be upgraded first, followed by her basic attack, and after this you can level her EX special and ultimate together. After this, you can also upgrade her assist and dodge, but in most cases you'll be fixated on using her basic, EX special, and ultimate the rest of the time. However, as a reminder, leveling up any of Aria's abilities will result in a DPS increase, and since she is a DPS after all, squeezing out as much damage as you can is valuable. Now let's move to Aria's gameplay. Aria's gameplay goals are split into 2 parts: pre-stun and stun/during stun gameplay. When not hitting against a stunned enemy, Aria has a few options for what she can do to generate Phantom Power and deal damage. Within the pre-stun combo, the most generic of what you can do is simply performing basic 4, then using a held basic attack once you've generated enough Phantom Power to start hopping. Alternatively, if you have enough energy, you can use this to generate Phantom Power through an EX special, leading to a separate combo of basic 4, EX special attack, held basic attack. That said, there are some considerations to this. First, you can add quick assists to the start of the generic basic 4 into held basic attack combo, especially if you have characters like Sunna or Yuzuha on your team. And second, as you prepare to use your held basic and start jumping, checking to have corruption applied to the enemy before you begin is also pretty important, as this increases the amount of damage that these hops will deal via a bloom. Finally, as a reminder, here is a screenshot of how much Phantom Power that you gain from different sources in Aria's kit, and so, for example, it would not be ideal to use her EX special if you have over 5 Phantom Power remaining. Let's move now to the stun combo though. Conceptually, Aria's stun combo is pretty simple. You use Aria's ultimate, build up Phantom stacks, and then spend it all against a stunned enemy. That said, this doesn't mean it's easy to perform, especially when the enemy has their own complicated attack pattern and buffs that you have to react to. In terms of what the combo actually looks like though, Aria will perform the following: quick assist first to Aria from one of her supports, EX special attack, ultimate, cancel chain attack, held basic attack 7 times, EX special attack, swap to another agent, chain attack to Aria, cancel chain attack on Aria, held basic attack 4 times, and that's the whole combo. One important thing to note here though is that Aria's strongest and most consistent damage comes from being able to use manual chain attack. This is because each of her jump or held basic attacks count as a heavy hit and can trigger a stun window, so keeping manual chain on for Aria is especially helpful given that it maximizes the number of jumps that you can perform during her stun windows. Additionally, when the combo lists something like 7 or 4 held basics, that doesn't mean that you're actually re-inputting or re-clicking the held basic input 7 or 4 times. Instead, you're simply holding down the basic attack and Aria will continue performing the jumps until you let go. To be clear, this is not optional and actually very important, especially during manual chain, as if you decide to re-input the left click every time that you jump, you'll actually activate the stun window instead. Aria's signature W engine, Angel in the Shell, is her best in slot option. Its main stat grants 30% anomaly mastery, while the passive increases her anomaly proficiency by 90 points. Additionally, when Aria uses a special attack or EX special attack against enemies affected by an anomaly, she gains a buff that increases her damage by 20% and increases the anomaly damage that she triggers by 10% too. Overall, it's her signature, so therefore it's likely going to be her best. Her next best option is Flight of Fancy, which is Vivian's signature, and this grants 90 anomaly proficiency as its main stat, and its passive increases anomaly buildup by 40%. To add to this, whenever Aria deals ether damage, her anomaly proficiency increases by 20 points per stack, up to 6 stacks, and as a result, this places it about 14% worse than her signature at rank 1. The Battle Pass W engine, Electro Lip Gloss, is also a strong alternative, and this grants 75 anomaly mastery as its main stat, while its passive increases Aria's attack by 10% and her damage by 15% when enemies are also affected by an anomaly. Performance-wise, this means it sits roughly 16% behind her signature at rank 5. For a more accessible or free-to-play friendly option, Weeping Gemini is a great choice. It provides 25% attack as its main stat, and its passive grants up to 46 anomaly proficiency per stack, stacking up to 4 times, which is pretty good as Aria scales with anomaly. At rank 5, however, this means it performs about 18% worse than her signature. Finally, if you have options like Practice Perfection, Sharpened Stinger, Time Weaver, or even something like Fusion Compiler, each of these are still usable on Aria, even if they aren't necessarily stronger than Weeping Gemini. Practice Perfection specifically trails by by about 19% compared to her signature, Time Weaver by 18%, Fusion Compiler at rank 1 by 22%, and Sharpened Stinger by 24% compared to her signature. Now, while you can run these of course as alternatives, Weeping Gemini still remains the most accessible and generally high-performing free-to-play option in most scenarios, making it the generally safer and more efficient option. Aria has several viable 4-piece options, but the easiest and most straightforward choice is her signature set, Shining Aria. Its 2-piece effect grants a 10% ether damage bonus, while the 4-piece effect increases her anomaly by 36 when hitting enemies with basic attack. Additionally, when the target is stunned, Aria's damage is further increased by 25%. That said, Aria can use alternative sets like Phaethon's Melody and Dawn's Bloom, and these are actually surprisingly competitive and can sometimes match or even outperform Shining Aria in certain situations. For transparency's sake, however, it's also worth mentioning that Dawn's Bloom is more difficult at times to maintain and utilize, even if its performance is higher, where Phaethon's Melody will actually just find itself being higher performing than Shining Aria by a decent amount in most cases. Despite all this, however, if you've already farmed for Shining Aria, this is by no means a bad set, and Aria's true best set may even change once Nangong Yu is released. We'll just have to wait and see. For 2-piece options, Aria's best choice is Phaethon's Melody, which increases her anomaly mastery by 8%. Other viable 2-piece alternatives include Freedom Blues or Chaos Jazz just for the additional anomaly proficiency, and this is especially more valuable if you're using 4-piece Phaethon's Melody. Chaotic Metal works here too as a 10% ether damage bonus though, and ultimately Astral Voice or Hormone Punk will also work for the extra 10% attack. For Aria's main stats, prioritize anomaly proficiency on slot 4, ether damage bonus or attack percent on slot 5, and anomaly mastery on slot 6. For subset priority, focus on anomaly proficiency first, followed by attack percent, then flat attack and flat pen as secondary options. But in terms of stat line, Aria will want around 2500 attack, 350 anomaly mastery or higher, and 250 anomaly mastery to fully max the scaling of her bloom damage with her core passive. As we move to teams, a quick disclaimer and recap before we go further. The full list of results in testing are on my Discord, and the recommendations / findings from this video are only a portion of everything that I ran. That said, here's a quick graphic of what to expect performance-wise and feel-wise for Aria's teams. From this, and if you're just here for a quick list of teams that you can run with Aria, her best team on launch will be Aria, Sunna, Yuzuha, and if you don't have access to this exact lineup or need Sunna for another team, other lineups like Aria, P6 Lycon and Sunna, Aria, Dial Sunna, or some variation of this / Yuzuha plus unlimited stunner will definitely work in the meantime. To break things down further though, let's take a closer look at a few specific teams, starting with a typical stunner plus support setup. Within this category of team, Aria performed very well with Sunna and limited stunners, delivering a 32,170 point in Shiyu defense and a 42,620 score in Deadly Assault with Trigger. Meanwhile, Aria, Sunna, and Dylan scored lower in Shiyu defense at 30,900, but outperformed the score in Deadly Assault with a 43,900 score. In a double support setup, Aria's performance varied significantly depending on the pairing. The Aria, Sunna, and Yuzuha team stood out with 35,400 points in Shiyu defense and an impressive 47,700 score in Deadly Assault, making it her strongest overall team option. By comparison, replacing some of the characters for a lineup like Aria, Astriao, and Yuzuha only reached 29,600 score in Shiyu defense and 36,200 in Deadly Assault, which was admittedly a very big drop compared to previous options. In a double anomaly setup, Aria, Yanagi, and Lycon at P6 scored 29,600 in Shiyu defense and 32,400 in Deadly Assault, but meanwhile Aria, MIYABI, and Sunna performed slightly better in Shiyu at 30,900, but also dropped in score to 30,300 in Deadly Assault. From just these results alone, it's clear that Aria is strongest when played as a solo DPS, but that doesn't mean that she can't be played with other anomalies. Additionally, though initial impressions of Aria's kit may have suggested that she'd need a stunner in every single lineup that she's taken in, that isn't really necessarily the case. On that note, if you're looking to play Aria without a stunner on the team, looking to find days from other sources like a physical based Bang Boo including Lucky Boo, or even changing someone like Sunna's 6-slot disc to Impact can actually help greatly. Finally though, for free-to-play friendly teams, Aria, Zhao, and Lycon at P6 was really the only passable quote-unquote free-to-play option. The good news though is that the lineup delivered 27,000 points in Shiyu defense and an impressive 43,300 score in Deadly Assault, making it a surprisingly strong budget option. But by contrast, if you were looking for an even cheaper or lower cost option beyond this, using something like Aria, Nicole, and Lycon P6 was definitely tested, though it was much weaker and scored 26,200 200 in shield defense and 26,800 in deadly assault. Now, of course, part of this is likely skill issue and not being able to use Nicole at her absolute perfect performance, but the gap in score is there for a reason, and it definitely is much weaker than even something like Zhao. Now let's move to Aria's Mindscapes. Aria's first Mindscape allows her to ignore enemies' ether anomaly build-up resistance, and her bloom damage can now critically hit. Her second Mindscape lets a bloom ignore the enemy's defense whenever it's triggered. Aria's fourth Mindscape restores energy and grants decibels each time that she triggers a bloom, and finally her sixth Mindscape instantly grants additional decibels and buffs her ether damage while in Moment of Delusion. This also allows her to generate all-out cheering stacks without needing to cast her ultimate, but recommendation-wise, I found that M1, M2, and M6 were the most reasonable stopping points. M1 allowing her a bloom damage to crit is huge and accounts for a 13% damage increase. M2 adding defense ignore is also major and provides a 10% damage increase, but finally, as her M6 allows her to stay in Moment of Delusion and deal more damage, this is pretty huge, and since it also does account for the highest damage increase at around 26%, it's the best choice for those who really love Aria's gameplay. To better understand why you may or may not want to pull for Aria, let's break down her pros and cons. For pros, she has a strong free-to-play engine alternative, she has a simple playstyle, she pairs well with stun characters even as an anomaly agent, she has extremely high damage even without the perfect team, and she has several sets that work well with her. As for cons, the double anomaly setups underperform compared to the hypercarry version. Aria is going to be missing Nangong Yu at launch, her performance is heavily team dependent, and players who've only farmed for shining Aria may lose out on some value compared to Phaethon's Melody. Now, there are a few things to consider for whether Aria could be worth your pulls. First, while both Aria and Vivian are ether anomaly agents, they play very differently. Aria leans heavier into the Ether Veil mechanic, and with certain buffs and bosses clearly designed around it right now, she naturally performs better in these scenarios. She also functions much more like a true main DPS, whereas Vivian fits more comfortably as a sub DPS along agents like Yanagi, Alice, Piper, or even MIYABI. As a result, the teams that you'd bring Aria into are fundamentally different from the ones you'd use Vivian in. Next, if you're someone who's skipped Sunna, keep in mind that Sunna does add roughly 2,000 to 5,000 points depending on the team and fight. That said, Aria is still playable without her, but the performance gap and difference in feel is pretty noticeable. Finally though, while not combat related, running the angels together unlocks unique team animations, which admittedly are a pretty nice bonus, and so with this, if you already have Sunna or Yuzuha, are planning on pulling for Nangong Yu, or if you just need a new ether DPS, I believe Aria is a solid pickup. She does lots of damage, is pretty straightforward to play, and even if you're someone who doesn't want to spend hours optimizing every part of her gameplay, she still does very well performance-wise. So guys, Aria is fantastic, looks fun to play, and is genuinely a cool looking Angel of Delusion. Yes, her gameplay can look very linear with her constant bouncing, but using her properly, timing her buffs and stun windows, all while trying to deal with the mechanics of the new boss can be challenging, and therefore, though it's fair to say that Aria may seem one-dimensional, I actually found her to be very interesting and enjoyable to play. Even in terms of performance though, she's still looking to perform extremely well at launch, and that's even without Nangong Yu even being available. With this, if Nangong Yu also ends up raising her performance even higher, as many expect, Aria will end up being one of the strongest anomaly agents that Zenless has ever seen. Because of this, and for myself personally, I will be pulling for Aria, but thanks again for watching guys, I'll see you all next time, take care.